The Hardy Boys, Book 1, The Tower Treasure, by Franklin W. Dixon. Chapter 14, The Confession. "Rocco's not around," Joe replied to Smuff. "There's water in the sink in the back. Shall I call the fire department?"
"No, I can do this,"
Smuff declared.
"but where's a pail?"
Frank dashed into the back room and found a pail under the sink. He filled it with water and handed the pail to Smuff, who hurried to the yard. He doused the incinerator flames, which hissed and crackled, then died.
"Some people have no sense,"
Smuff commented.
"The idea of anyone starting a fire, then going off and leaving it. I'll bet that was Rocco's work. As for you boys, you had to call me. Didn't have the savvy to put out a simple fire."
"Good thing you were around," Frank observed, suppressing a smile.
"I'll say it was,"
Smuff agreed.
"And Chief Collig is sure gonna hear about this."
"Oh, please don't tell him about us," Joe spoke up, half closing his eyes so Smuff could not see the twinkle in them.
"I didn't mean that. Oscar Smuff is no squealer. I mean, Collig is gonna hear what I did."
The detective chuckled.
"One more notch in my gun, as the cowboys say."
Suddenly, Smuff sobered and looked at his wristwatch.
"Oh, no!" he cried out. 10 minutes to 6. I can't make my plane."
"That's a shame," Frank said consolingly. "But cheer up, Smuff. There's a 7 o'clock plane for Albany. I wish you luck in your interview." Smuff stormed out of the fruit store and disappeared with his car. The Hardys and their friends burst into roars of laughter, which did not stop until a woman customer came into the shop. All the boys but Frank and Joe left. Rocco returned at 6:30, pleased that so much fruit had been sold during his absence. "You better salesman than Rocco," he grinned wildly. The Hardys went home, well satisfied with their day's work. The 6 o'clock plane had left without Smuff. Their father could make his trip to the hospital without the annoying detective's interference. Fenton Hardy did not return home until the next afternoon. When the boys came from school, they found him in high spirits. "Solved the mystery?" Joe asked eagerly.
"Practically. First of all, Jack Lee is dead."
"Did he confess?"
"You're not very sympathetic toward the poor fellow, Joe." "Yes, he confessed. Fortunately, Oscar Smuff didn't show up while Jack Lee was talking."
Frank and Joe glanced at each other, and their father smiled quietly.
"I have an idea," he said, "that you two sleuths know more about Smuff's business than you would care to tell. Well, anyhow, the Albany police and I had a clear field. I saw Jack Lee before he died and questioned him about the tower robbery."
"Did he admit everything?"
"Jack Lee said he came to Bayport with the intention of robbery. He stole a car, smashed it up, and took Chet's. Then he went to rob the ticket office. When he failed in that, he decided to hang around town for a few days. He hit upon Tower Mansion as his next effort. Jack Lee entered the library with gloves on, opened the safe, and took out the jewelry and securities."
"What did he do with the loot?"
"Well, that's what I'm coming to. It was not until Jack Lee knew he was at the point of death that he did confess to the Tower affair. Then he said, 'Yes, I took the stuff, but I didn't dare try selling any of it right away, so I hid it. You can get all the stuff back easily. It's in the old tower.'"
That was all he said. Jack Lee lost consciousness then and never regained it. Well, when did Smuff get there? Joe asked eagerly.
Not until after Jackley had gone into a coma, Mr. Hardy replied. We both sat by his bed hoping the man would awaken, but he died within an hour. Just where Jackley hid the loot in the old tower, he was never able to say.
Does Smuff know what Jackley said?
No.
Well, if the loot's hidden in the old Applegate Tower, we'll find it in no time, Frank exclaimed. Tower Mansion has 2 towers, the old and the new, Joe reminded him.
We'll search the old tower first. The story seems likely enough, Mr. Hardy remarked. Jackley would gain nothing by lying about it on his deathbed. He probably became panicky after he committed the robbery and hid in the old tower until he was able to get away safely. No doubt he decided to hide the stuff there and take a chance on coming back for it sometime after the affair had blown over.
Joe nodded. That was why Jackley couldn't be traced through the jewels and the bonds. They were never disposed of. They've been lying in the old tower all this time.
Well, I tried to get him to tell me just what part of the tower the loot was hidden, Mr. Hardy continued, but he died before he could say any more.
Too bad, said Frank, but it shouldn't be hard to find the loot,
now that we have a general idea where it is. Probably Jackley didn't hide it very carefully. Since the old tower has been unoccupied for a long time, the stuff would be safe there from snoopers.
Joe jumped up from his chair. I think we ought to get busy and go search the old tower right away. Oh, boy! Maybe we can hand old Mr. Applegate his jewels and bonds this afternoon and clear Mr. Robinson. Let's go!
I'll leave it to you boys to make the search, said Mr. Hardy with a smile. Then you can have the satisfaction of turning over the stolen property to Mr. Applegate. I guess you can get along without me in this case from now on.
We wouldn't have got very far if it hadn't been for you, Frank declared.
And I wouldn't have got very far if it hadn't been for you. So we're even. Mr. Hardy's smile broadened. Well, good luck to you.
As the boys started from the study, Frank said, Thanks, Dad. I only hope the Applegates don't throw us out when we ask to be allowed to look around inside the old tower.
Just tell them, his father advised, that you have a pretty good clue to where the bonds and jewels are hidden, and they'll let you search.
Joe grinned. Frank, we'll have that $1,000 reward before the day is over. The brothers raced from the house, confident that they were about to solve the tower treasure mystery.